The girl who accused Prince Andrew, that's Virginia Giuffre, can also easily be proven to be a liar. I think Buckingham Palace would love it. You should task someone to investigate the girl that has caused the Queen's son all this aggro. I promise you she is a fraud. You and I will be able to go to Ascot for the rest of our...
Meghan Markle is once again presenting a clean slate to the world. New year, new energy. Carefully framed posts about fresh starts, authenticity, and building something meaningful on her own terms. It's the same image she's leaned on since stepping away from royal life. The idea of a woman rewriting her story after adversity. But while that narrative plays out online, another conversation refuses to disappear. One that doesn't show up in glossy interviews or lifestyle branding. One that keeps resurfacing in corners of the internet many people never look at closely. It starts with a name that immediately makes people uncomfortable. Ghislaine Maxwell. According to online reports and commentary circulating in recent years, Maxwell, now serving a lengthy prison sentence.
The girl who accused Prince Andrew, that's Virginia Giuffre, can also easily be proven to be a liar. I think Buckingham Palace would love it. You should task someone to investigate the girl that has caused the Queen's son all this aggro. I promise you she is a fraud. You and I will be able to go to Ascot for the rest of our...
Has allegedly made remarks suggesting Meghan Markle moved in elite social circles long before fame, long before royal life, and long before the carefully curated public story begins. These claims are unverified. No public documents have been released. No official accusations exist. But the reason people keep paying attention isn't because they trust everything Maxwell says. It's because of what she used to do for a living. Maxwell wasn't just another socialite. By most accounts, she was deeply embedded in elite environments where power, money, and influence overlapped. Her reputation, fair or not, is tied to recognizing patterns. Knowing who belonged where, who was ambitious, who understood how access worked. That's why when her name gets attached to speculation about anyone in public life, it creates noise. Not proof. Noise. And noise is exactly what surrounds the years Meghan rarely talks about. Before Suits, before Soho House headlines, before Prince Harry, there's a stretch of time that remains oddly thin in detail. Public records show Meghan graduating from Northwestern and pursuing acting in Los Angeles.
Sit there and sort of see names of famous wealthy people. Yes, they were on planes, they knew Jeffrey Epstein, but you kept wondering, well, what else did they know? Did they, did they fund Jeffrey Epstein? And by the way, did Jeffrey Epstein then steal?
Small roles, commercials, guest appearances, a familiar story for thousands of aspiring actresses. But parallel to that official timeline, photos and anecdotes exist showing her in places most struggling actors never see: luxury yachts, exclusive European destinations, private events attended by people with serious wealth. None of that proves wrongdoing, but it does raise questions people keep asking. How did those doors open? Supporters argue the answer is simple. Friends, luck, being in the right place at the right time. Critics say that explanation doesn't fully account for the level of access shown. Billionaires don't invite strangers into private spaces casually. Ultra-wealthy circles tend to be protective, not generous. Invitations usually come through someone trusted. That's where Soho House enters the conversation. Soho House is often described publicly as a trendy private members club, but insiders describe it differently. It's a controlled networking ecosystem. Membership isn't automatic. Access is curated. Introductions are intentional. Deals, relationships, and opportunities happen there precisely because privacy is protected. And one name is consistently linked to Meghan's rise inside that world: Marcus Anderson. This part is documented. Anderson was a senior figure within Soho House's global operations. His job involved membership and connections. He wasn't just attending events. He helped decide who belonged in the room. According to widely reported accounts, Meghan and Anderson became close during her Toronto years while filming Suits. From there, her access expanded internationally. Again, none of this is illegal or secret. But critics argue it explains something important. Meghan wasn't moving randomly through elite spaces. She was moving through a structured network designed to connect ambitious people with powerful ones. That distinction matters. People familiar with elite social ecosystems often describe them as transactional without being overt. No contracts, no obvious exchanges, just mutual benefit, access for access, presence for opportunity. And critics claim that's where the speculation about Maxwell's alleged comments comes from, not accusations of crime, but recognition of a pattern. According to those claims, Maxwell allegedly suggested Meghan was working elite circles in a way that went beyond casual networking. That phrase, often repeated online, is vague on purpose. It doesn't describe a crime, it describes a strategy, one ambitious people have used for centuries. There is no public evidence supporting this claim, but there is also no public denial addressing it directly. That silence is what fuels the fire. Meghan has responded forcefully to many criticisms over the years. Lawsuits, statements, interviews, carefully worded rebuttals. But on this topic, yacht rumors, elite networking speculation, alleged connections to powerful men, there has been almost no response at all. Observers point this out not as proof of guilt, but as a strategic choice. Legal experts often note that denying certain claims can open doors to discovery. Questions, requests for records, travel histories, witness statements. Sometimes silence is simply the safest option when rumors can't easily be disproven without inviting deeper scrutiny. And scrutiny is exactly what critics say Meghan avoids when it comes to her early access to wealth. Take the timeline again. A cable television actress, earning modest industry pay, traveling internationally with apparent ease, appearing at invitation-only events, building relationships that later translate into career jumps. Suits itself, critics argue, wasn't just a lucky break, it came through connections. Then came the introduction to Prince Harry, again through Soho House networks. Seen separately, each step can be explained away. Taken together, skeptics say they form a pattern that looks deliberate. This is where supporters and critics completely split. Supporters argue Meghan is being unfairly judged for being socially intelligent, attractive, and ambitious in elite spaces dominated by men. They argue the speculation reflects outdated discomfort with women who succeed through relationships as well as talent. Critics argue the issue isn't ambition, it's authenticity. They say Meghan's brand relies on the idea that she rose purely through hard work while being excluded by powerful systems, not assisted by them. And that's why these rumors won't disappear. They directly challenge the core story she tells about herself. If Meghan benefited from elite networking long before royal life, then the image of an outsider breaking into power looks very different. Not false, but incomplete. And in the world of personal branding, incomplete stories can be as damaging as scandals. So where does this leave things now? According to reports, Maxwell has never publicly released any documents backing her alleged claims. No names, no lists, no proof. Everything remains in the realm of speculation and second-hand accounts. But the idea that someone who once operated inside elite social machinery claims to recognize familiar patterns is enough to keep people watching closely. Because if nothing exists, the story dies quietly. But if something does exist, records, corroboration, witnesses, it wouldn't just change how people view Meghan's past. It would force a reevaluation of how power, access, and image building really work at the highest levels. And that's where part 2 begins. Because the next layer of this story isn't about rumors anymore. It's about why the stakes are so high that silence might be the only option. If part 1 was about patterns, part 2 is about consequences. Because speculation doesn't become powerful when it's loud, it becomes powerful when it's consistent, unanswered, and structurally plausible. At the center of this entire controversy isn't proof. It's risk. And that's the part many people underestimate. From a legal perspective, silence is often misread as fear or guilt. In reality, it can be a calculation. Lawyers routinely advise public figures not to respond to claims that could trigger discovery. Discovery doesn't care about intentions or branding. It cares about records, travel logs, emails, introductions, guest lists, calendars, third parties, and that's where this situation becomes uniquely sensitive. Unlike tabloid gossip, the speculation surrounding Meghan's early elite access intersects with organizations that do keep records. Private clubs, event hosts, luxury travel coordinators, membership networks, These systems don't run on memory, they run on documentation. Not for scandal, but for logistics and liability. That's why critics argue the real danger isn't what Maxwell allegedly said. It's what others could confirm if forced to. Soho House, for example, is famously protective of member privacy. But protection doesn't mean absence of data. It means controlled access to it. Internally, membership histories, invitations, event attendance, and introductions are tracked. That's how exclusivity works. If any allegation were formally challenged in court, even indirectly, it could open doors no one wants opened. That's one reason legal silence can be the safest route, even when claims are false, exaggerated, or incomplete. But silence has a cost, because narratives don't freeze, they evolve. Online, the speculation has already expanded beyond Maxwell herself. Commentators now connect dots between Meghan's social mobility, her rapid comfort in elite environments, and her apparent ease navigating royal culture. Critics argue she adapted too quickly to be naive. Supporters say she's simply intelligent and socially skilled. Both can be true. What unsettles critics most is the idea that Meghan may have understood royal dynamics long before meeting Prince Harry. Not through fairy tales or movies, but through proximity, through observing how power actually behaves when cameras are off. Some authors and commentators have speculated, again, without proof, that Meghan may have crossed paths with royal-associated figures earlier in life through elite circles. These claims remain unverified, but their existence matters because they change how people interpret later events. If Meghan entered royal life with prior exposure to elite political and social systems, then her actions appear strategic rather than accidental. Not malicious, strategic. And that reframing is dangerous to a brand built on authenticity and emotional sincerity. This is why the stakes extend beyond Meghan herself. Prince Harry's public identity is deeply tied to the idea that he broke free from manipulation and control, that he chose love over hierarchy. If the narrative shifts toward the idea that he was outmaneuvered by someone fluent in elite networking, it undermines his moral positioning entirely. That's not just embarrassing, it's existential. It reframes their relationship not as a rebellion, but as a transaction, even if unintentional. And public sympathy is brutal when it flips. The entertainment industry is even less forgiving. Streaming platforms, publishers, and sponsors don't require scandal to walk away. They require instability, ambiguity, the possibility that a brand could become toxic. That's why partnerships often dissolve quietly before controversies peak. It's also why the absence of denial doesn't calm speculation, it feeds it. Because audiences now understand PR strategy. They know silence isn't neutrality, it's management. And here's where Maxwell re-enters the picture in a more subtle way. Even if she never releases a single document, the idea that someone with her background claims knowledge creates a permanent shadow. Not because she's trustworthy, but because she was positioned to know how these worlds overlap. In elite circles, reputation is often built on recognition. "I've seen this before." That kind of statement doesn't accuse, it implies familiarity. And familiarity is enough to destabilize public narratives. What's often overlooked is that this story isn't about whether Meghan did anything illegal. Nothing presented requires criminal behavior. It's about whether her rise aligns more with strategic social mobility than with the inspirational version sold publicly. That's a much harder accusation to fight because it exists in a moral gray zone. Ambition isn't a crime. Networking isn't a crime. Leveraging beauty or charm isn't a crime. But denying those elements while monetizing authenticity creates tension. And tension is where public trust erodes. This is why critics believe Meghan's only viable strategy is endurance. Let the story age out. Let attention move on. Avoid creating moments that force clarification, because clarification invites questions, and questions invite records. But endurance only works if no one else speaks. The most destabilizing factor in this entire narrative isn't Maxwell. It's time. People age, loyalty shifts, silence agreements weaken. And when multiple individuals hold fragments of the same story, control becomes impossible. That's why speculation continues to grow even without evidence. It's not being driven by outrage, it's being driven by pattern recognition. People sense there's more to the story than what's been told. Not necessarily darker, just different. And in a culture that now values transparency over perfection, that difference matters. If nothing ever surfaces, Meghan's image survives dented, but intact. The rumors become another chapter in the long history of scrutiny she's endured. But if even a small, verifiable detail emerges, a record, a corroborated timeline, a confirmed introduction that contradicts the public story, the conversation changes permanently. Not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it proves curation. And curated lives are fragile. The irony is that the truth, whatever it is, likely wouldn't destroy Meghan's story. It would humanize it, complicate it, make it real. But once you build a brand on control, complexity becomes a threat. That's why silence continues. And that's why, whether anyone likes it or not, this story hasn't ended. Because the most dangerous secrets aren't the ones shouted by enemies. They're the ones that survive quietly until someone decides they're done protecting them.